this is Ruthie of Ruthie K's. Welcome to So Much Talk, where we talk about sewing and what you need from a seamstress. I'm a seamstress. I do custom work and I do alterations, lots and lots of alterations. We've been talking about weddings currently because right now people are getting engaged, and congratulations to everybody that's getting engaged once again. And what we talked about last week were different options to wedding gowns. And the week before that, we talked about the calendar of getting into a wedding, basically, and what you were looking at with that. So you can go back and look at those also. If that, we hope that these all help you in getting ready for your wedding, whether it's 2 months, 6 months, or a couple years from now. So this week we're talking about budgeting for your wedding gown. And alterations most common, not questions, alterations most common. So let's start with the alterations most common, and then we'll end with our budgeting, because then if you're listening in order, it'll make even more sense to you. So the most common alterations that we have are hems. Hems are one of the biggest costs that you will have on your wedding gown. And part of that is because of the amount of hemming that needs to be done and the layers of hemming that needs to be done. And yes, it costs the same for an alteration as time-wise to trim off your net as to cut and turn your cloth pieces up, your satins and your other pieces. So wedding gowns hems are based on the style of your dress. If you have an A-line, and by style of your dress, we're talking at the bottom. If you have a mermaid, woo, then you're going to have a lot more hem. So it may be a ball gown hem that you're paying for. So in my business, my personal business, we label them as A-line. And that's a straight to an A-line.
And ball gown.
And ball gown. Yes. I was trying to think if we had a third one, but I don't think we do.
No.
We have an A-line and a ball gown. Your ball gown is anything from your Cinderella dress, your quinceañera dress. Those are all ball gowns. If it flares out from the waist or from the knee into a really wide skirt, if it flows smoothly and doesn't have a lot of net to hold it out, but it's really wide when you hold it out, that's going to be a ball gown. Just so you know. Then we have straight skirts and A-line skirts, which are an A-line goes in an A-line. It looks like a A from your waist down. And it's not super full, but it's not a straight skirt. A straight skirt follows the line of your body either all the way down or it drops straight from your hips. So those are what we have. And for a prom dress, this is the same thing. We go by layers. So if you have a dress that has 3 layers of slip underneath, then that's a 3-layer dress. You're going to get 3 fees. You'll get we'll say it's a straight skirt. You'll get the A-line straight skirt fee 3 times. If there's a train on the dress and you want to keep that train, yes, we're only going to do half of it. But that's still going to cost you the same amount. We don't take off because we're doing less of the hemming. And on a ball gown, we're still doing a lot of hem on that.
Even if you're only cutting the front, though, you have to make sure that it flows properly into the train when you trim it up. So it's still the same amount of work to make sure that everything is at the right layer, right level.
And the prices should be based on the skill level as well as the time it takes. The more skilled your seamstress, the more she's most likely to charge you. At Ruthie K's, we do not charge highest dollar. And we do not charge highest dollar for a reason. That reason is most of the people I deal with in my particular area that I live haven't had a lot of alterations. And so we have a big educational issue going on. As I gain more clientele and all, yeah, then I may also raise my prices to a higher rate because I'm not going to have time to do everybody that I need to do. And so then I just weed out to a certain customer level. And that's just the way business goes. Okay. But I, as a seamstress, want people to get alterations and to learn to love alterations as well as give you good alterations. So we are going to have later a couple other podcasts. One of them is going to be how to interview your seamstress because you want to find out their skill level. You may not need somebody that can't do more than a hem. And there are many seamstresses out there that their specialty is going to be doing hems and maybe side seams. But if you have a corseted bodice on your top and you need the bust taken in, you need somebody that can actually deconstruct that and put it back together. So look for that too, is how to interview your seamstress, because maybe you're going to take all your other stuff to Mrs. A, who is a basic seamstress and very, very good at basic seamstressing. Not sure what that
Tailoring.
word is these days. Tailoring. Um, but if you need something that has more intricacy to it, and you may not know, but if it has a lot of boning, it has more intricacy. And if you need the bust taken down or added to, that's a much more complicated process the more structure there is in the garment. Structure is how many layers the bodice has and whether it has boning, how many seams it has. All of that is structure.
So would a good rule of thumb be if it's because structure probably needs defined a little more. Would a good rule of thumb be if it's a garment that has a lot of seams, it would be more complicated?
Yes, a
Okay.
lot of seams, a lot of layers, because some of your wedding dresses, you don't know this necessarily, but some of your wedding dresses in the bodice have up to 5 layers.
Yeah.
The most common is 2 to 3, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of layers in there, even
To make
if it's
everything lay
mostly
smooth.
net.
Yeah.
hmm And when we're dealing with net, sometimes it'll have up to 3 layers of net underneath all your applique because it needs that to make it stiff enough and
Hmm.
not as easily to tear. Okay. So those are some of the issues that you have. Um, if you want the train removed, you need somebody that you want somebody that has experience doing that. It doesn't look like it's hard, but it's making it. You have shapes to change. And trains are not all created equal. Some trains are long and narrow. Some trains are wider. They come off the sides of the dress and scoop in. Some are curved to more degrees than others to where they look circular, though you never have a circular train. They are always, even if you can't see it with your eye, egg shaped,
Hmm.
because that's what causes them to follow along behind you. So without folding up on itself. So those are all the different things that if you don't sew and you haven't taken a wedding dress apart, you probably wouldn't know. So what you're looking for on the outside is how long is the train? Do I want to have my train? Bustling, bustling. We'll probably have to have a whole podcast, Anna, on that. So make a note. Um, I love bustling and I hate to see an ugly bustle. Okay, so that's why we'll talk about bustling. There's a real skill to bustling and an intricacy to bustling that's more than I'm just going to put one point up on the back of your dress. So these are the things that you want to look at, and why I'm talking about that is because they all are common alterations for wedding gowns. Okay, it's because it's hems and bustles are going to cost you the most. Anna?
Um, So I just wanted to make sure we're defining terms here real quick. So a hem is shortening the length of a dress or a pair of
Mm-hmm.
pants. And a bustle is when you have a train on a dress and you make pin-up points using buttons and loops, usually, um, to pull up your train and make it even with the rest of your gown so you can walk more comfortably after the formal um,
And not
ceremony
ruin your train.
and not ruin your train. So just making sure we're
Okay.
defining so everybody knows.
So hems and bustles are, once again, to reiterate it, hems and bustles are your most costly items because of layers of hem and because of numbers of bustle points.
Yep.
So you want to check on what's the price per bustle point, and you want to be aware of how wide your skirt is and that's going to cost you a certain amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have sides and shoulders, which are our next biggest thing. Sides, when we're talking bringing in sides, you are talking bringing into a minimum of 2 layers of a side. You're also talking about possibly removing boning, though many of our wedding dresses actually leave that side seam open of boning. It's free of boning. They put boning every place else so that it can be altered. Wedding dresses are amazing in that most of them are made to be altered.
Yeah.
They have a seam allowance, which means, and when you have a seam allowance that's this big, that means I can literally go up 2 to 3 sizes
Mm-hmm.
when we take out a seam. Um,
Just a rabbit trail to a historical fashion. A lot of clothes used to be made with a lot more versatility this way. But it's still held on in bridal and formal suiting, which is
because
interesting.
because with bridal it's there is an expectation, though many of us don't have it come true, that somebody's going to wear this dress after you.
I would have
So
worn
yeah.
yours, but I don't think it would have fit.
And shoulders are a bigger thing now. And that's a shoulder is anything from fixing your spaghetti strap, which is going to cost you less than if you actually have a shoulder on it that comes down. Um, and if it has a sleeve on it, then the sleeve may also have to be adjusted. And those are sleeves are not something that's been as common in bridal, and a lot of bridal is still strapless. But those are your most common things because you may want somebody to add a sleeve to your dress. So again, you need to know what the skill level is of your seamstress or alterationist. So those are our main things: hems, bustles, sides, shoulders, and sleeves. Now, there are a lot of other pieces that could come in. You may need the bust decreased or the bust increased. You may need to have a corset back added, which is actually a pretty common alteration, but I don't put it with those top five. Yeah, five. So those are the things that you need to be sure you're actually budgeting in and looking at when you're looking at a wedding gown is how many layers does it have, because you're going to be charged for that. How long is the train, and how many bustle points is it going to take? And being sure to look up and wait for our podcast on bustles, because I have a lot of opinions on how to get you a gorgeous bustle.
Bustles are her favorite. It's true. Another point for time budgeting as well as cost is if your dress is heavily appliqued or beaded. Um, that also does cost, and
Yes.
it does take more time. So that's something to allot in as you're making your planning. We saw a lot of applique in the last year.
And as a lot of applique. And as a seamstress, I have to let you know that sometimes I'm going to be able to take that applique off like that. Most of the time, I'd say, huh, Anna? It
Most of the
can
time.
take me a long time. And it all depends on how tightly it's sewing on. And I use that word because I don't mean well. It can be sewn on to where it can easily come off without falling off. So we're not talking a miss as far as sewing quality.
Mm-hmm.
From a seamstress perspective, if I can take your applique off easily, that's a good thing. It saves me time and I'm able to do it a lot quicker. Because one of the few times that I personally, over the many years, have had to call somebody and say, "We're going to have to move back the date on your wedding dress," is because it's taking me longer to take your applique off.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the most common, but there have literally been appliques that have taken me 3 literal 8-hour days to take off. So and that's just enough to get into your side seam
Yeah.
or to get your hem up, because one of and there is a charge for removing applique. Um, and just to bring that up, since we were talking hems, most lace on the bottom of your dress is appliqued on. It's not part of that top layer of your dress. So we have to lift that and actually move it up on your dress.
Which answers one of our most common questions is if I have my dress taken up, do I still keep all of this great detail at the bottom? The short answer
Mm-hmm.
is yes,
Yes.
except in very rare occasions. So, because we
And
do, or Ruthie does, because she does all the amazing work. Her and Naomi.
so if we can't lift it up, most of the time, there are very few times I'll look at you and say, I absolutely can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Is we can cut that little lace on the bottom and actually move it up if it's
Mm-hmm.
literally part of the lace pattern of that top layer of your skirt. But again, most of the time it's literally just sewed on. And so we just lift that and move it up to the layer we need in the front of your dress. So with that, we've talked about the most common alterations, and those are hems, sides, shoulders, and sleeves, and bustles. Then again, we have any other possible alteration that we may need to make your dress fit. And those other alterations will tend to be more complicated. Then you have the super easy ones like I need a new hook for my hook and eye at the top. That one's super easy.
Or my zipper isn't quite working and needs fixed or replaced.
And then we would do a total zipper replacement on
Mm-hmm.
your zipper. And
Or, sorry, go ahead.
and that costs you the price of the zipper as well as the work.
The other one that we've gotten that's a fairly simple one is I have this dress and the applique beading lace or whatever just needs re-sewn down because it's a hand-me-down or it just wasn't sewn on properly.
And
And those are
that
really
one,
simple, but
but they can be costly
they can be costly, yes.
because it takes time to sew on those beads and appliques. And if
Mm-hmm.
you have 5 appliques that need to be sewn on, that's going to take probably about 2 hours to get it on neatly. And I end up doing a lot of that by hand myself.
So without promising specific prices on anything, what would you say our current ballpark is on average for most brides?
For the total amount,
What people usually spend?
350 to 500.
Okay.
And we'll talk more about that too in the next one, which is on budgeting.
This is the one I'm budgeting.
This is the one on alterations. Most
I thought we
common
were talking budgeting.
alterations.
Oh, I my coffee has not settled on my neurons yet. I do apologize.
Okay. But so to sum it all back up, There are 5 main things and then a whole bunch of other things that we do. And an average cost at Ruthie K's, now this is just at my store, you'll need to call around and ask, is about 350 to 500 in alterations. And it's mainly doing hems, sides, shoulders, sleeves, and bustles. So this is Ruthie and Anna of Ruthie K's with so much talk, talking about sewing and alterations.